Have you ever wondered why some people earn millions of dollars yet still struggle to get by, while others with average incomes manage to live comfortably and stress-free? Money might seem like nothing more than numbers, simple addition and subtraction, but in reality, it's shaped far more by our emotions, luck, habits, and even the deep-seated fears within us. Morgan Housel, the author of The Psychology of Money, points out a powerful truth. No one is truly crazy when it comes to money. We all act based on our own unique experiences. And that explains why Americans spend over $1.3 trillion every year on things they don't really need just to impress people they don't even know. In this journey, we'll explore timeless yet powerful principles about money, from luck and risk to the magic of compounding, and most importantly, the freedom that money can bring. This isn't just a book about financial management, it's a book about how to think, so you can live wealthier, wiser, and with greater peace of mind. Don't forget to hit like and follow the channel so you won't miss out on more great books about money, finance, and personal growth. Part 1. Money and Emotions: Why No One is Truly Crazy. When it comes to money, we often assume that every decision should be based on logic, calculations, and clear numbers, but reality looks very different. If you take a closer look at people's financial behavior, you'll see it doesn't resemble math at all. It looks much more like psychology. Let me tell you a story. There was an American man born in 1940. His childhood unfolded in the years right after World War II, when the U.S. economy was booming. Between 1945 and 1970, the stock market kept climbing steadily, and real estate seemed to have only one direction: up. To him, investing was simply obvious, like a money printing machine. All you had to do was put in capital and patiently wait. He grew up believing that risk was temporary, but profits would always come to those who stayed the course. Now let's look at another person born in 1975. This person came to age right as the U.S. stock market collapsed in the early 2000s when the dot-com bubble burst. And before they could recover, 2008 arrived, the year of the financial crisis. Lehman Brothers went bankrupt, 8 million people lost their jobs, 6 million families lost their homes, and the average American household saw nearly 40% of its wealth vanish. For this generation, investing wasn't an opportunity, it was a wound. To them, holding cash felt safe, while stocks and real estate were nothing more than dangerous gambles. This reveals an important truth. No one is truly crazy in how they view money. Each of us acts according to our personal experiences, the memories etched into our childhoods and our lives. Gallup statistics confirm this. Before the 2008 financial crisis, about 65% of Americans owned stocks. After the crash, that number dropped to just 52%, and even more than a decade later, it still hasn't returned to previous levels. In other words, an entire generation reshaped its approach to investing simply because they saw with their own eyes their parents lose everything. That's why two friends, living in the same city, working the same job, earning similar incomes, can use their money in completely different ways. One may dive headfirst into the stock market, convinced that risk is simply the price of reward. The other might stash most of their assets in savings accounts, convinced that safety is what matters most. And both of them are right in their own way. Housel offers an interesting perspective. We often judge others as foolish or ignorant when we look at how they handle money. But if you stepped into their shoes, with their personal history, the events they lived through, you'd see that their actions actually make perfect sense. The problem is, we can never live through someone else's experiences. So instead of mocking or judging, it's better to accept this. Money is tied to emotions, to memories, to unique life experiences that cannot be repeated. And once you understand this, you'll stop looking for a universal formula that works for everyone. There is no one-size-fits-all solution. There's only the approach that fits you, your past, your beliefs, and your story. Part 2. Luck, Risk, and the Idea of Never Enough. When it comes to financial success, we often hear the glorious stories. Warren Buffett with his legendary vision, Elon Musk boldly taking risks with Tesla and SpaceX, or Jeff Bezos building Amazon out of a tiny garage. Hearing stories like these, many people believe success is purely about talent and hard work. But Morgan Housel reminds us, luck and risk play a much bigger role than most of us realize. Take Bill Gates as an example. Everyone knows him as the genius behind Microsoft, but few pay attention to how much of his story began with the school he attended. In 1968, Lakeside School in Seattle, Washington, where Gates studied, was one of the very few high schools in America with a time-sharing computer terminal. Back then, computers were so rare and expensive that even top universities didn't have them. If Bill Gates hadn't had access to a computer at just 13 years old, would Microsoft exist today? It's hard to say. Warren Buffett, the world's fourth richest man, openly admitted, "If I had been born in a different country or in a different era, I might never have become an investor. I was simply lucky to be born at the right time in the right place." But luck is only half the story. Risk is always lurking too. Remember Lehman Brothers in 2008? It was one of the largest investment banks on Wall Street, with a history spanning 158 years. And yet, in just a few months, it collapsed completely, dragging the entire US economy into crisis. Thousands of employees lost their jobs. Millions of families lost their homes. For many, this wasn't a matter of personal mistakes, but systemic risk, something entirely outside their control. Housel uses these stories to emphasize a point. When you look at someone's success or failure, never separate luck and risk from the picture. A 2018 study from Stanford University analyzed thousands of billionaires and self-made millionaires in America. The results showed that beyond hard work and discipline, the timing of when they entered the market, whether during an economic boom or in a rising industry, was a decisive factor. In other words, a big part of success came down to being lucky in the historical moment. This leads us to an important lesson. Be humble in success and compassionate in the face of others' failures, because you never really know everything they've been through. Your success may carry the imprint of a unique opportunity others never had, and their failure may be the result of an unexpected risk they couldn't control. Housel's advice is clear. Instead of trying to copy a billionaire's story, learn to accept uncertainty. Understand that you can't completely eliminate luck or risk from the money game, but you can prepare your mindset. When you succeed, don't get arrogant. When you fail, don't get bitter. At the end of the day, money is not just about numbers. It's a game of probability, where luck and risk work together to shape our destiny. Key takeaway from this chapter: humility is the safety valve of financial thinking. It keeps you grounded when you win, and it keeps you from despair when you lose.
Part 3. The Power of Compounding. There's a famous story about Warren Buffett, the legendary investor everyone knows. Today, his net worth is over $100 billion. But here's the surprising part. Most of that wealth didn't come from brilliant, once-in-a-lifetime investments, as many people assume. It came from compound interest over time. Let me share a number that might shock you. Buffett began investing at just 10 years old. By the age of 30, he was already worth more than $1 million, a massive sum back in the 1960s. But the key is this: he didn't stop. He kept investing, letting money work for him, decade after decade. And here's the most astonishing fact. 99% of Buffett's wealth was accumulated after he turned 50. What does this mean? If Buffett had started his investing career at 30 instead of 10, even with the same intelligence and skill, his fortune today would likely be just a fraction of what it is. In the world of finance, people are often obsessed with chasing high returns. They run after hot stocks, cryptocurrencies, or startups that might grow tenfold. But the truth is this: the rate of return matters far less than the amount of time you let your money grow. Imagine you have $10,000. If you invest it at 10% annual returns for 10 years, you'll end up with about $25,937. If you simply leave it for 30 years, it grows to $174,494. And if you stay patient for 50 years, it skyrockets to nearly $1.2 million. All because of one simple formula. Compounding equals returns multiplied by time. A 2018 Fidelity report revealed a fascinating case. The investors with the best performing retirement accounts were often the ones who had actually forgotten they even had an account. They didn't withdraw, didn't trade constantly, they just left their money alone and let compounding work. By contrast, those who tried to outsmart the market with frequent buying and selling usually ended up with worse results. What makes compounding magical isn't complex math, it's patience. You don't need to be a genius or a market wizard. You simply need to put your money to work, nurture it, and let time transform small sums into massive wealth. Morgan Housel calls this the magic of patience. It's like planting a tree. In the first year, you hardly notice any change. But after 20 or 30 years, that same tree can shade an entire garden. The lesson? Don't just focus on chasing big short-term gains. What you really need is to start early, stay consistent, and let compounding do the heavy lifting. Part 4. Getting rich versus staying rich. Getting rich is one thing, but staying rich, that's an entirely different story, and often the harder challenge. Morgan Housel explains that to build wealth, you often need courage, a willingness to take risks, ambition, and even a bit of recklessness. But to keep wealth, the recipe is almost the opposite. You need humility, a healthy sense of fear, caution, and most importantly, the wisdom to know when to stop. Take lottery winners in America, for example. Studies show that more than 70% of jackpot winners end up broke within just 5 years. Why? Because they never learned how to manage and protect wealth. They assumed the money would keep flowing forever, so they spent recklessly, invested blindly, or became easy targets for people looking to take advantage of them. Staying rich requires a completely different mindset. It isn't about one brilliant decision. It's about discipline, repeated day after day. Warren Buffett once said that the reason he became one of the wealthiest people in the world wasn't just because he knew how to invest. It was because he never let himself go broke. One of his golden rules is rule number 1, never lose money. Rule number 2, never forget rule number 1. The 2008 financial crisis illustrates this perfectly. Many people who had been wealthy before the crash lost everything because of greed. They poured their money into high-risk bets, never knowing when to pull back. And when the market collapsed, their fortunes vanished in a matter of months. On the other hand, the people who remained truly wealthy weren't necessarily those who made the fastest gains, but those who still had their capital intact when the storm passed. The lesson here is simple, but critical. To become wealthy, you need bravery, but to stay wealthy, you need prudence. Don't just ask yourself, how can I make more? Always ask, how can I make sure what I have today is still here tomorrow and continues to grow? Part 5. Freedom, the ultimate goal of money. If there's one thing we all truly crave from money, it's not supercars, mansions, or fancy dinners. The ultimate goal of money is freedom. Morgan Housel emphasizes this. True wealth isn't measured by the number in your bank account. It's measured by the control you have over your own time. Real wealth is being able to wake up in the morning and decide what you want to do, with whom you want to do it, and when you want to do it. That is the highest form of wealth. Consider a well-known study in the US on life satisfaction. Researchers found that once people earn enough to cover their basic needs, happiness doesn't increase much with higher income, unless that income brings more control over their time. A surgeon might earn $1 million a year, but if they're working 16 hours a day with no time for family, they'll likely feel trapped. Meanwhile, a teacher earning $60,000 a year, who has summers off and afternoons free to spend with his kids, may feel far more free and content. Another striking example is Ronald Reed, a gas station attendant in Vermont. He lived simply, saved diligently, and invested for the long term. When he passed away, he left over $8 million to charity. But what made him truly wealthy wasn't just the money. It was the fact that he lived life on his own terms, free from pressure, free from competition, choosing a life of peace and independence. The real insight here is this: we often think money will buy happiness, but in reality, money's greatest value is when it buys freedom. The freedom to rest when you're tired, the freedom to be with your family when they need you, the freedom to say no to things that go against your values. Housel's lesson is crystal clear. Make freedom your highest goal when it comes to money. Because at the end of the day, you don't live to prove your wealth to others. You live to experience peace and happiness in your own life.
Part 6. Saving, Humility, and the Surprises of the Future. One of the greatest secrets of lasting wealth isn't how much you earn, it's how much you keep. Saving is the foundation of financial freedom, and it comes down to two things: living with humility and preparing for life's inevitable surprises. In America, many high-income earners still end up drowning in debt. A software engineer in Silicon Valley might make $150,000 a year, but if they buy $1 million house, drive luxury cars, and live extravagantly, they'll have little left at the end of the month. Meanwhile, a middle-class family earning $60,000 a year, if they live modestly and save 30% of their income, can quickly build an emergency fund and invest for a more secure future. Morgan Housel emphasizes this point. Saving doesn't depend on your salary, it depends on your habits and humility. Too many Americans are trapped in the rat race. The more they earn, the more they spend, chasing validation and status. Yet the people who remain truly wealthy are often the most unassuming. Warren Buffett, one of the world's most famous billionaires, still lives in the same house he bought in 1958 for just $31,000. His fortune wasn't built solely on brilliant investments. It was built on humility and frugality. And then there's the future, always full of surprises. The 2008 financial crisis wiped out millions of jobs and homes because so many people live paycheck to paycheck without savings. The COVID pandemic told the same story. Those with strong emergency funds got through it far more easily, while those relying solely on monthly income struggled immediately. Saving isn't just about stashing money away. It's about buying security and buying the freedom of choice for your future. With a safety net, you no longer live in fear of every unexpected twist. Living humbly frees you from social pressure and allows you to focus on what really matters: freedom, security, and long-term happiness. The message is clear. Don't let your income define how wealthy you feel. Let your ability to save, your humility, and your preparedness for an uncertain future define it instead. Part 7. People and the Paradox of Money. Money seems simple. You earn it, you spend it, you save it, you invest it. But as Morgan Housel argues, in reality, money is a psychological game, and people themselves are the most complex part of that game. The paradox is this: we know rationally what we should do, yet our emotions often drag us in the opposite direction. Take the U.S. stock market during the 2008-2009 financial crisis. Millions of investors panicked and sold their stocks at rock-bottom prices. They knew, at least in theory, that staying invested would be wiser. But fear took over, leading to costly mistakes. A decade later, when the market had not only recovered but soared to new highs, many realized they had missed the chance to multiply their wealth,
all because they couldn't master their emotions. Another paradox: we often judge someone's wealth by what we see, without knowing the hidden reality. In America, you might see a man driving a brand new Tesla Model S and living in a 5,000 square foot home and assume he's wealthy. The truth might be that he's buried in debt, making high interest payments every month. Meanwhile, another person drives a 10-year-old Toyota Camry, lives modestly, yet quietly holds $1 million in retirement accounts, something no one ever notices. Housel emphasizes, real wealth isn't what you flaunt, it's what you build quietly behind the scenes. That's the paradox of money. Society glorifies the visible, while true financial security lives in the invisible: patience, discipline, and sustainable habits. The story of Ronald Read is a timeless example. He was a gas station attendant in Vermont, living an unassuming life that made people think he had very little. But when he passed away at the age of 92, he left behind $8 million for charity and family. He didn't win the lottery, he didn't gamble on risky ventures, he simply lived humbly, saved consistently, and invested patiently in stocks for decades. His life is proof of the paradox. Those who are truly wealthy often don't look wealthy at all.
Part 8. The final lesson: money is a tool, not the goal. After all the stories, lessons, and paradoxes, Morgan Housel asks us to pause and recognize a simple truth. Money is only a tool. It is not the ultimate goal of life. In America, countless stories exist of billionaires who spent their entire lives accumulating wealth, climbing the Forbes list, acquiring more companies, buying more real estate. But in the end, they still face the same question: did I live for money, or did I use money to live better? Money cannot replace family, it cannot replace health, and it cannot buy genuine happiness. What it can do is serve as a means to achieve freedom, peace of mind, and the opportunity to live life on your own terms. Housel points out that many Americans rush into the wealth race as if money were the finish line. But the paradox is this: when they finally arrive, they often feel empty because they turned money into the destination rather than the vehicle. Think of it simply. A car can take you from point A to point B, but it doesn't define who you are. Likewise, money can pay your mortgage, send your kids to school, care for your parents, and build a secure life. But if you treat money as the sole meaning of existence, you will never feel satisfied. And this is the book's greatest message. Let money serve your life. Don't let your life become a servant to money. True wealth isn't measured by the balance in your bank account. It's measured by the peace, freedom, and fulfillment that money, when used wisely, can bring. Dear friends, we've now reached the end of our journey through The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. Across 8 chapters, we've discovered that money is not just numbers. It's a game of emotions, of patience, and above all, of how we choose to view life. We've learned that true wealth isn't about how much you earn, but how much you keep. And most importantly, money should serve our freedom and happiness, not the other way around. When we understand this, we finally take control of money instead of letting it control us. If this book has given you fresh perspectives and valuable lessons, don't forget to hit like and follow the channel. In the coming weeks, we'll continue bringing you audiobooks of powerful titles, books that can reshape your financial mindset, transform the way you look at money, and maybe even change the course of your life. So stay with us on this journey of learning and growth, and let every day bring you closer to the freedom and success you truly deserve. Thank you for listening, and see you in the next audiobook.